Hello and welcome back to Hudson Auto Films. Today we're back working on the Nova. In last week's episode we brought the chassis back from the dead, and in today's episode we are going to try and resurrect an engine. And not just any engine, a very special engine. So, stay tuned, let's do this.
Well, that is a sorry sight. Sadly, this is all that's left of the 1500 Alfa engine that was in the Nova. Today we need to figure out if it can be saved, and more importantly, whether it should be.
Yeah, there seems to be quite a lot of mud in these coolant passageways.
Yeah, the other side is completely solid.
Well, absolutely full.
Yeah, the top ones are completely blocked.
Yeah, really, the block could do with being dipped. But we could have another solution to that.
Mechanic life hacks with Steve.
There's a way of removing rust from steel. Don't use vapor rust. That's expensive. Use molasses mixed with water.
Right.
1 part molasses to 4 parts water. Dip it in. A few days later, take it out. All the rust's gone.
Really?
The metal's left absolutely fine. Very good little trick there, and it tastes good as well. Yeah, there's quite a little hole there.
Yeah.
That
That was the first one I saw.
is different. I haven't seen one of that before. It's almost like an impact from a.
Well, I didn't know if it was when it was seized and I pulled it away and it sort of had a bit of rust locked onto it.
Well, when it's with the seizing of the engine, there's 3 there and 1 in a row, and that is where the top ring sits. Don't think that's ever going to come out of the home. So the depth of those, I mean, that's probably 1/2 mil deep, maybe even more. So even with the rebore, I don't know what the rebore sizes are, but normally they go up to 3/4 mil, maybe even 1 mil. I don't know what they have on these Alfa engines. You might be lucky because obviously a 1 mil rebore is 1/2 mil either side.
Yeah.
And if that's 3/4 mil, you'd never get rid of it.
Yeah.
So what one might have to do, like I was saying, is consider the option of filling that in.
But before that, a message from today's sponsor.
So buying cars can be a stressful thing, but with the help of today's sponsor, Car Vertical, you can take out the anxiety with their comprehensive background checker. I've just pulled up the report on this rather cool Porsche Cayman GT4, and immediately the Car Vertical report hits us with a bunch of yellow warnings on damage and emissions. So let's look a bit deeper. As you can see, the report provides a plethora of photographs documenting all of the historic accident damage. So even if this car gets fixed up, it's documented, so none of that can be hidden. Next up is a big one, mileage. Even with modern cars with fancy computers, you can trick them into having lower displayed mileages, which means the seller can boost the price. But as you can see with Car Vertical, you can track the historic mileage, you can see if it all aligns or if there's any weird jumps or changes in the mileage, so you can rest assured that you have an accurate reading. But here is the big one which we are warned at right at the beginning of the report, damage. This vehicle was marked as an insurance write-off. As you scroll through the damage report, you can see in this case, the Porsche has unfortunately been damaged 3 separate times. You can see initially it was written off as a category S, then just a few months later after it was fixed, it was damaged again, and then a few months after that, damaged yet again. So this Porsche has had quite a life. So with Car Vertical, you can rest assured that you know everything about the car you are buying. So please do go check them out. I've left their links in the description. You can get 20% with my code Hudson. And another great bonus, if your report for whatever reason returns no results, which is very unlikely, you will get your credits restored to you so you can use them another time. Sponsorships like Car Vertical make episodes like this possible, so please do go give them some support down below.
So we had established the damage to the block wasn't repairable without a rebore, and even then it wasn't a certainty that it could be repaired at all. With that in mind, the current surface of the bore was irrelevant, and that gives us the freedom to do something that these days you're not really allowed to do, especially on YouTube. We're going to try and weld the damage away. So, trigger warning, the next 5 minutes might be a little bit hard to watch. So to even attempt to successfully weld the inside of a bore, we needed to make sure it's very clean and then make it very, very hot. Not to mention to use special welding rods, which I'll put up on screen. And after absolutely boiling the block for about 20 minutes, it was time to try and lay some weld. After we had a nice splodge of weld in the pit, it was time to cut it down a little bit. That rhymes. And being as careful as a bush mechanic can be, all we're trying to do is reduce the height of the weld repair, not try and scuff and mess around with the bore itself yet. And after lots of adding and taking away, we had a nice unpitted weld. So it's now time to use another very technical device.
Too much.
But this very high-tech, technical, safe procedure ended up revealing something even more significant than the damage we were trying to repair.
You can see the corrosion quite clearly. Where the pitting of the corrosion is, the top ring.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And that's all pitting. So.
Wow, yeah.
We had a huge amount of corrosion where the piston ring was sitting, and we had exposed a lot more very deep scores. And no, this is not from what we'd done. This is historical.
We've delved a bit deeper, and although we can try and repair these areas, it will leave probably something to be machined. Wouldn't really be a problem. Send it to the machine shop, get it bored. But it looks like we've got a scratch, very deep scratch, a rusty pitted area that is deeper than we actually thought. Now it's been cleaned and we can feel it. Another pitted area, and the normal wear from the cylinder bore wear. I'd say this bore is beyond use, and unfortunately we're either looking at sleeving or replacement block, whichever's more economical.
Well, it was worth a try and it was good fun. What's frustrating though is only one of the cylinders is bad, the rest are actually really clean. But we need to go back to the drawing board. Whilst we were at it, we decided just to strip the rest of the engine down and inspect everything. I wasn't sure what the plan was moving forward, but we might as well see what usable parts we've got and what other problems we've got lurking. So, after lots of fiddling and a lot more parts lying around, we'd established a lot of the engine was good. Yes, very dirty, but there was a lot of savable parts. The heads were good, the crank was good, it was just the block which was buggered. The trouble is these days, these Alfa engines are actually quite hard to come by. For many years they were dirt cheap and they were everywhere, and as a result they weren't really taken care of, so most of them are now Coke cans. So now we've got to figure out, do we try and repair, get a new block or rebore, or go for something totally different? But then, when all hope seemed lost, Steve came bearing gifts. What we have here is a later Alfa Boxer engine. In fact, it's also bigger. It's a 1700 and it's got the hydraulic tappets. And well, it's been spec'd like Papa Smurf. But there was already a problem. Do you see that? That bore is as rough as, well, I better not say. So we have yet another engine missing the main component we need, the block. So why did we get it? Well, like I said, parts are so hard to get hold of, you have to jump on anything you can find, even if that means you just get a water pump out of it. You can buy some parts off the shelf, but they're ridiculously expensive, and what you really need is often not available at the time you need it. So all this is a parts engine. So let's strip this down and see if we can find anything useful. So here we are again, another engine, a lot more parts, but have we moved ahead at all?
So what is your take on the new replacement spare broken engine?
Really what we've got is another typical Alfa Boxer problem, that the engine's been sat unused and somehow it's got moisture into the bores. Unfortunately, every single bore has got pitting. It seems to be, even if the pistons are not at TDC, moisture gets in there and forms on the lower part of the bore and just corrodes away. I'm looking at it now and it's like the surface of the moon. You can't be having that, and without going for a rebore, this block's scrap. And really, a rebore means new pistons. New pistons means great expense because you can't really get second-hand oversized pistons. So really, another scrap block.
What parts of it are good, would you say?
We've got a good crank. The crank is looking all right. It's also unusually blue, which really tells us that the crank has got hot. Now either that means all the bearings have seized and the crank's overheated, or probably the crank's been heat treated. So I'd say a good crank is a bonus. We've also got 4 pretty good rods and pistons. The rods are fine, the pistons, 2 of them are good. They've all got minor scoring on the skirts, but unfortunately 2 of them have got valve damage where the valves contacted the top of the piston. No great shakes, it's just a little mark on some of them, a little bit of fettling with the Dremel, and those will be good. The top rings are all free, so we're all right there.
So what are our options moving forward?
Realistically, we can make a 1.6. There's a 1.5 block, 84mm bore, and there are 4 good 87mm pistons and rods. Stronger rods as well. So making a 87mm bore 1.6 with a short stroke means it retains its high revvability. It's got a little bit more torque, a little bit more grunt, and overboring that block is possible. So that's one option. The second option would be to get another block again.
So even though a plan was starting to form, I couldn't help but feel that this wasn't the right choice of engine. I'm not sure what the right engine was, but this wasn't it. A huge part of me wanted to stick with originality, but another part of me wanted to go above and beyond and do something truly special. And then something happened. After a lot of late night searches, Steve and I managed to uncover something that could be the answer. Something to keep the purists happy and retain the history of the Alfa's engine within the Nova, but also something to really liven this build up. And based on nothing more than a very blurry FaceTime video, I committed to buying a turbocharged Alfa racing engine. But this wasn't just any racing engine. This was a turbocharged, dry-sumped monster that had been running on methanol, supposedly back in the day putting out over 300 horsepower. And to make matters even more exciting, it was co-designed and tested by Steve Soper, an iconic racing driver. The engine and the car had long been separated, and as you can tell, the engine was in a million pieces, so this was a big gamble. But this was a gamble I wanted to take. And after a few days of patiently waiting, my turbo race engine had arrived. Now that is an exhaust.
It's too big for that.
Christ.
Can't even
proper exhaust.
what's that Australian?
Oh, didgeridoo?
Yeah, it's a bit didgeridoo, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bit long for the. It's a little bit long for the Nova.
Yeah, that is.
The engine's in the back.
This engine was bought off someone's garage floor. Even though Steve had done as many checks as possible, there's only so much you can do in that circumstance. So everything was a bit daunting. What did we actually have here?
Hey, there's the turbo.
A race car engine or another box of rubbish? First things first, we need to unpack everything and see what we're working with. The big challenge is, unlike building a factory engine where you know the specs of everything, every single part of this engine, every tolerance is completely unique. It's like a giant Lego set with no instructions. First up, we have a block. Hopefully this one's usable because I don't need any more Alfa coffee tables. We also have some rather fancy looking heads and lots of doubles of almost every single part. We certainly now had a full Alfa engine division and enough spark plugs to last me a few years. This is still a classic setup, so the turbo did run off a carb, and let's get into that. Look at this fancy pipework. The cost of making this, especially back in the day, would have been a fortune. But certainly the exhaust will need some modification unless we want a tractor style exhaust coming out the top of the Nova. But here's the big one, the turbo. The craftsmanship in this setup was amazing, but at this point I was getting a little bit anxious because This was a little bit more complicated than the sort of engines I'm used to. But the cherry on top, a rather lovely Sisney crank. So there we have it. The turbocharged, methanol-powered, dry sump Alfa engine was unpacked, and looking scarier than ever. A cup of tea was definitely needed at this point. I need my mind to be nice and sharp. So going back to the idea of building a Lego set without any instructions, we have no idea the specs or the tolerances of this engine. So we need to do a dry build. This will let us know what parts are usable, we can measure everything, we can understand what we're working with. On the plus side, we do have a lot of other spare parts, so even if some of the turbo race engine parts aren't usable, hopefully we've got something else we can replace them with. So let's dive in. But first things first, we need to inspect the block. At first glance, the bores look good, but we need to hone them so we can get a better idea on the actual surface, if there's any scratches. So let's see. So the first one is done, and it looks pretty good. There are some small scores, but nothing too scary. It is worth noting this isn't the final hone. We just want to get an initial idea on the condition of the block, so we can assess whether it's usable. So far so good. They weren't perfect, there was a few small scores, but with a better hone, they should come out. So we cracked on, did a lot of measuring, cleaned out the other cylinders, and well, here's the verdict.
Right, so pistons, scratches, what's your take?
The piston we've got here is quite a nice one actually. It looks like a forged racing piston. It's got some rather large cutouts there for the valves, which isn't standard. It's quite heavy for its size. So that means to me it's definitely a forged one. The fact it's got no wear on it, where the bore has got a little bit of wear on the inside, the bore seems to have taken the brunt. Good pistons. In terms of the size and the wear on the pair of them, piston's 84.04mm and the bore is 0.3mm wider. That's about getting towards the very top spec of a turbo racing engine kind of bore, piston to bore clearance. You can probably go another 0.035mm to make it 4th hour per inch piston to bore clearance, but you don't really want that in a road car. This isn't going to be, extremely boosted anymore. It's not making the power that it used to. It's going to be lightly boosted. It's going to be looked after. So I think we're running on what we can do as a limit for piston to bore clearance. But in all, little scratch in there, that's nothing to worry about. It's not right at the top where the first ring sits at TDC on compression. So you're not going to lose all your compression. Maybe a little bit of blow by as the engine runs, but that's one cylinder. The other three are pretty much decent. So I'd say no need for a rebore. She's going to run and it'll run great.
Yeah, they're really different.
That is so different. It's much wider here, much kind of a longer beam there. No raised skirt. No oiling holes, less oil holes, more of a T-top piston. The rings are about the same diameter.
With the block and pistons accounted for, let's take a look at this turbo.
We've got it. We might as well keep using that. I know it's an old school, slow moving, won't do anything till 4,000 RPM kind of turbo, but it fits. And as it fits, we might as well do it for the first try to get the engine running. If it's not what we want, swap it out later. Once we know how this performs, we'll know which way to go in terms of, it's road manners. You don't want it lagging all the time you're trying to drive and it not making any power because you don't get to 4,000 RPM full throttle. I don't know if you do, but I don't. And you won't be making the big end power at like 4 to 7, 8,000 RPM. You'll be more like pootling around in city traffic. So it might not be the right turbo. We'll give it a try, see how it goes. Swap it out later if it's disastrous, but it's there. Might as well use it.
So decisions to make are
which way to go for the first build. I mean, it's not going to be a race engine. We're not going to go that far. We don't really want the dry sump That's complicated, got its own problems, and locating the tank, even as far as just deciding which oil level to run and finding the oil level and keeping it checked, that's hassle. Might be worth putting the standard sump back on the race block, have it with a standard oil pump, put the drive system back through in this casing, or just use the other casing.
Yeah, because we do have all of this, a full engine department. So
we can just chop and change the best parts to achieve the best engine for its use in the car as you want it, rather than it being a fire-breathing, rip-snorting, absolute demon machine, but terrible to drive. So we'll go middle ground, possibly, keep the interesting exhaust pipe.
Yeah, that'll come out the roof.
Well, it's rather large.
It is.
Yeah. But, it doesn't need to be that long. It could be slightly shorter. But it's going to have a silencer called the rotary silencer.
Yeah.
Other parts that need to be decided on using is the clutch. We've got a race clutch over there. How that drives, well, you can probably guess. If it's a 3-puck sintered clutch, it's probably either on or off. It's a binary clutch.
It's not going to be nice in traffic.
And it will, it'll be a jerking, lurching monster. So possibly keep the standard clutch if it's able to handle the power that this engine's going to make in the end. Now, obviously, the gearbox on this fine chassis here can't take as much power as this engine has been producing in its past life as a race engine. So if we limit to the gearbox's capacity, that clutch could probably handle it as well. So we're going to make life easy by keeping the gearbox safe, using the standard clutch, not having it driving horribly, keeping the boost down, keeping the power down, having it tractable in traffic, and driving like a, hopefully, normal car.
But a street racer.
But one that can do a bit more than the standard Nova.
It's going to lift that front up, isn't it?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah.
So we had a plan, and almost all of the parts from the race engine were usable, but there was a slight bit of damage to the crank. But we'll talk about that later. We've got some options we can look into. But to figure all that out, we need to begin the dry build. This will allow us to iron out all the final kinks and be on the path to an amazing engine. So let's do this. First things first, we put the original crank in. We might not be using this as mentioned, but we needed to get an idea of the stroke, so we wanted to assemble it in its original form first.
Ooh, hey.
In she goes.
There we are. Look at that.
Yeah. Ta-da!
So when we bought this, we were told it was a 1.5, but after a lot of measuring, we found something out.
So, a 64mm stroke.
64mm stroke, a 1.3.
Cool.
Let's make it a 1.5, should we?
Yeah.
Let's try 1.5 then.
So it turns out we actually bought a 1.3, but the crank in the 1.3 isn't great. So we have our 1.5 crank, so we're going to put that in and see if we can change the compression ratio and not run into any issues. So let's give it a go. Our 1.5 crank was not spick and span ready to be used, but for the sake of measuring and our dry build, it was fine.
See if she wants to be a 1.5. That feels tight already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our bearings were too small, but luckily we had lots and lots of other options. And now with a set of standard size bearings fitted, let's see if this thing would turn. So now we had a freely spinning 1.5 crank fitted, but how much would this impact the stroke?
Hold the bearing in just so it can spin on the crank.
And with our piston fitted, the moment of truth was here. Would it poke out?
Here we go.
Ooh.
That's protrusion. Just a tiny bit.
So we had a tiny bit of protrusion, but would it be too much?
Now you've got the gasket that sits on here that
Yeah.
will absorb that protrusion.
Yeah.
Stop the piston hitting the head. But ultra high revs, all of this stretches, piston's expanded because of the heat.
Yeah. Might be risky.
Is it going to be risky to touch the head? We don't know. Plenty of meat in there.
Yeah.
Plenty of thickness in the gasket to stop it.
So like Steve said, even though we had protrusion, the gaskets on the head are so thick, so that should stop us from running into any issues. But let's have a little recap.
What's the situation?
What have we got today? Well, we have got a 1.3 crank, race crank, that has some journal damage. It's also been reground, so it's 0.01 undersize. We've also got a 1.5 crank, which is the slightly longer stroke, which has no journal damage, hasn't been reground, will nicely fit a set of new bearings and do us a better job, because on a turbo motor, that'll help the turbo spin up faster, seeing as it's a bigger capacity.
So our 1.5 crank was the winner, but as you can see, there is a tiny bit of wear. Something's definitely ran through it. It's nothing crazy, and we think we might be able to polish it out. Now, what we're about to do next, again, might upset some people, but trust me, it'll be all right. We're going to polish the crank using a timing belt. Using a drill and a timing belt, we are going to rotate a piece of high grit sandpaper round the crank, whilst one of us is also rotating the crank. This should nicely polish out the slight wear we have. Some may frown upon this method and suggest it could cause flat spots, but this was done for years and I think we'll be okay. And ultimately, you guys get to find out down the road whether this engine goes bang. Look at that, nice and shiny. Now we had a nice polished crank, it was time to keep building up our dry build. Next up was to get an idea of our ring gap. Again, one of the many measurements we had to figure out, as none of this was standard.
And there's the ring gap.
Loose. Right, 0.2.
Now we had our ring gap, it was time to put the piston assembly back in, and then we could look towards our heads. So we had 3 different head options: the racing ones,
Bit dirty.
our original ones, and the 1.7 hydraulic ones. We felt for the Nova's application, the best one to go with was the 1.5 standard heads.
Bottom. You roll it on. Nail on. That's how she goes. So there we go.
And just like that, we have an engine. Well, half an engine. But the next thing to do is put the belts on and see if this thing communicates or slaps into each other and makes loads of nasty noise.
And down, put a little tensionable. So the TDC. For a long time. Not timed correctly, but hopefully the valves and pistons don't touch. No, so they don't touch.
Obviously the engine wasn't timed properly and it was only half built, but it was close enough to know whether we were running into any problems and if anything was going to touch. And well, everything was good. This was a really cool moment. We had taken a very special race engine, which we had no specs on, combined it with 2 other engines and made something that will be usable. But of course we cannot stop there. Let's mount up this turbo setup. And with the manifold in place, let's welcome the turbo.
Does it matter?
A bit like that. Let's just like that.
Yeah. Look at that.
Chunky.
Cool.
Finished.
Finished. Job done.
Finished it.
Come fire it up.
Like that. So it goes.
And after a little bit more fiddling,
Okay.
look at that. You might need to squint your eyes a little bit, but that is looking pretty cool. Today we went from having a broken engine to having 2 broken engines to having potentially 3 unusable engines, and through that we have managed to make a half race spec turbocharged engine which we can actually use in this car. So it's been a successful session. Now of course everything needs to be stripped down, cleaned, painted, made nice, refreshed, all of that sort of thing and built up properly. But we had a plan, we had a blueprint, and this Nova was getting a very exciting engine built for it. And in my opinion, this is the perfect engine for the Nova. It retains the heritage, the connection with the Alfa engine, but we're going to the most extreme level of Alfa engines, or at least for this type. I know a lot of you wanted to see a Subaru engine, but in my opinion this is even cooler. Not to mention, likely more powerful, especially when you remember this car is so light you can lift it up. But before I sign off, there was one last thing on my mind, the exhaust placement. Perfect positioning.
Okay, so there we go, another very exciting and productive session on the Nova. This build really has gone to another level with this engine choice. Don't worry, the exhaust location isn't final, but I don't know if you saw just the way the turbo system is, and obviously the engine was designed to be the other way around, we have to get quite creative with the exhaust. So I'm thinking the exhaust should come out the deck lid, but not protrude that far, just sort of stop, sort of like the modern McLarens. I'll put a picture in if you know what I mean. So things really are progressing well with the build. We're no longer cutting things up and stripping things down, well, a bit more on the body, but we are now building things up. So things are about to get very, very exciting. Thank you so much for all your continued support on this build. If you enjoyed this episode, and even if you didn't, please do like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of thing. It really does help me out. Allows me to keep making silly episodes about silly cars, and I'm having a good time, so I hope you are too. If you'd like to support the channel further, please do check out my Patreon. It is linked down below. We are about to start an exclusive build on the Patreon around the 4x4 Aston. You guys will see it further down the line on YouTube, but it's kicking off a bit earlier on the Patreon, so please do be sure to check that out. Another great way to support the channel is merchandise. Again, linked down below. All proceeds go into building these silly cars. But regardless, I'm just so grateful that you're here watching. The support over the last few weeks is really overwhelming, so thank you so much. So until next time, take care, and I will see you then.